mistaken. They tell me they have finished the alarm testing. That was alarming. So let us all join together here, and hopefully you all have the agenda before you or available. We're going to start with a gaming compact amendment with the Suquamish tribe, and that is going to be presented by the Gambling Commission, Tina and Julie, Tina Griffin and Julie.
Okay, great. So we'll go ahead and start with our folks from the Gambling Commission, and I think Senator Kaiser was in the middle of saying Tina Griffin, who's the interim director, Julie Lees, the tribal liaison, and Brian CONSIDINE, who is their legal and legislative manager. And so we'll go ahead and kick it off to you to go ahead and begin.
Good morning, Madam Chair Kaiser, Madam Chair Kloba, committee members and staff. For the record, I'm Tina Griffin, interim director of the Washington State Gambling Commission. I believe both committees and their members are familiar with the Class 3 tribal gaming compacting process, having been before you with similar presentations in the last few months. So with your permission, I'll forgo most of my presentation this morning, allowing more time to go over the compact amendments as well as for tribal presentations. Is that okay to proceed in that fashion?
Please proceed.
Thank you. I'm happy to, next slide, please. I'm happy to say that we now have 5 citizen commissioners serving part-time. Christine Reeves joined the commission on May 3rd for a 5-year term. Commission Chair Bud Sizemore is joining us in the hearing today and is available for questions. And then if you could advance to slide 9, please. I'll turn the presentation over to our tribal liaison, Julie Lees, excuse me, to share with you the compact changes, and I will continue to be available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Julie Lees. I am the tribal liaison for the Washington State Gambling Commission. Next slide, please. Today, to start, we are going to be discussing the proposed amendment of the Suquamish tribe. It's the 5th amendment. These changes are similar to changes that have been before the commission in recent months. I can quickly go through each one, or we could just leave it for questions. Madam Chair, how would you like to proceed?
Would you please just go through these items on the screen, and then we'll hear from the tribal representatives.
Perfect, thank you. So the first item on the screen you see talks about updated wager limits. What this proposed amendment will allow the Suquamish tribe to do is have $1,000 wager limits at 25% of their gaming stations. It would also allow them to offer up to $5,000 wager limits after pre-screening. There will also be, they will be able to operate up to 125 gaming tables at their gaming facility. They will also be able to operate up to 3,000 player terminals at their gaming facility. For the tribal lottery system, they will be allowed to operate $30 wager limits. There's going to be no limitation on the number of those $30 terminals. However, the minimum on those, any terminals above $20 will be $5. And then they also have added what we're calling a future lottery provision. So if the lottery increases their wagers in the future, the tribe can request that it increase as well. This adds some responsible gaming program. It actually reaffirms what the tribe is doing for their responsible gaming program. Also adds problem gambling funding. It goes from 0.13 to 0.2%. The community impact and charitable contributions have also been increased. This will also allow for an extension of credit to qualified customers. There is provisions listed in the appendix of what those provisions are, and then we'll work with the tribe to create an MOU and then their internal controls on what those criteria will be. Registration for gaming employees. I think we talked about this just last month. The compact currently has a certification process where the state does more of the background work and the TGA does some additional background work and licensing. What registration does is put more responsibility onto the tribal gaming agency for gaming employee background. We're still involved in the process. It's just the tribe is taking on more of that responsibility. And then the tribe is also offered to look at a possible pilot program to find an alternative to the annual regulatory fee. Right now, we have a process outlined in the compact, and we're hoping to find a better way to charge those regulatory fees. And with that, Madam Chair, I'm available for questions.
I don't see hands. I've got the participant list up. Let's see.
Senator King's hand is raised.
Senator King's hand is raised. Okay, great. Senator King, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just was curious, the increase in the funding for community and charitable went from what percentage to what percentage, or however that's accomplished?
So for the, sorry, Senator.
Nope, go ahead.
So for the charitable contributions, in the past, it's only been the machine gaming or the tribal lottery system gaming that's included in that contribution. This adds the table games revenue to that calculation. And for the community impact, there's a couple of changes. One is there were some deductions that were allowed in the compact before that have been removed. And we also modified the percentages so that there's a slight increase in community impact. So community impact would go to emergency services, like governmental infrastructure for locals, those types of things.
And when you say, if I may, Madam Chair, when you say a slight increase, what are we going from what to what? Is it a percentage or a dollar amount, or?
Absolutely. So there is a, in the compact currently, it's 2% of table games and 1/2% of the tribal lottery system. And what we've done is increase the tribal lottery system from 1/2% to 0.6%. And then the table games has reduced to 1.5. But the balance of those two end up being an increase, plus the removal of the deductions.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I see Representative Wicks also has a hand up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Was curious about the pilot program for the annual regulatory fee and what that entails. If you could describe that a little bit more, that would be great.
We don't have the specific details yet. What we're doing is giving ourselves the option to go ahead and update it. The current process involves a cost allocation model that identifies the costs related to the regulation of tribal gaming. And then we distribute those costs based on how many hours we spend working with each tribe. That is a very complicated formula to work out each year. And so what we're hoping is something a little more simple, and the tribe is willing to work with us on that.
Great, thank you.
Right. I don't see other hands at this point. Oh, Representative Kloba.
I think I raised it just as you were saying you didn't see any. So this, while I do understand that there is a memorandum of understanding process that will occur in the future with regard to extension of credit to qualified customers, I do have a question, and it's possible that this is something that could be answered by the commission staff, as well as perhaps later the perspective from the tribe. So either both or one or the other. My concern is over the rates that potentially could be attached to this extension of credit. Certainly we have the range of what we think of that you might, with a standard bank, the amount of interest that you might pay on a general consumer loan. And then I think at the other end of the spectrum, we know that payday lenders charge quite a lot more, and can be effectively an APR of 200, 300, 500%. So I'm curious what kinds of detail would be able to be laid out in a memorandum of understanding, and what sort of, is it envisioned that there might be some sort of limit on the percentage rate that could be offered, or any type of limits of how many of these loans a person might be able to get? Because unfortunately, we know that sometimes with these type of loans, people stack them one against the next and the next, and then they're very deep into a hole of debt that's difficult to climb out of. So that's kind of my concern. And if you could help me understand what might be some of the details that could be sorted out in a memorandum of understanding, and any potential goals that the commission would have for such a memorandum.
So if I may, I will go ahead and start, and then I will ask for Chair FORSMAN and possibly Ryan Ramirez for some additional clarification. The way that the appendix is written, there are several criteria that we need to make sure are addressed in an MOU. So the way that the structure works is you've got the basic criteria that will be addressed in the appendix. The MOU will kind of further clarify those provisions. It can't replace them or change them. All an MOU does is clarify. And then there's a third part will be the tribe's specific internal controls that will be the specific processes they'll follow. So with the repayment of the debt collection, there's three things that the tribe will need to address in their MOU. First will be the repayment not to exceed 90 days. They need to specify if they have late payments, penalties, interest charges, or similar fees, any type of settlement process, those types of things, prohibition on further credit extension if there's an unpaid balance. So those would be addressed as well. And then there's also a requirement for them to follow the federal debt collection laws. So that, I think those three pieces address specifically, Representative Kloba, what you're looking at. But I will phone a friend with Chair FORSMAN and Ryan Ramirez if they're available to answer any kind of further questions about what the tribe's intent is.
They'll be presenting shortly, so that
maybe we can do that during their portion if we can hold on to that. But just as a follow-up, I sort of went down a rabbit hole last night with doing a little bit of research, and there are, like you said, federal requirements for lending money, but there are some federally recognized tribes who have gotten into the business of this sort of payday lending or short-term loans that are at a high interest rate. And their contention is that none of the federal regulations apply because they are a sovereign nation and this banking is happening from their reservation land. And so it felt like there was a little bit of a gap there. If we don't understand the companies with which the tribe will be working in order to loan the money. And so perhaps this may be something we have to look into further, but my concern would be if the casino is loaning money through a company that works that's tribally owned or operated, then they wouldn't be restricted to federal banking guidelines. So I guess my real question is, because it would be stated in a memorandum of understanding, would then truly the federal banking laws be applied, even though it might be a loan that's extended on tribal land and thus not otherwise subject to those rules?
I am going to leave that question for the tribe to respond.
I think that we can move on to Representative Morgan's question and see if we can get to some further clarifications too.
Thank you,
Go ahead.
Madam Chair. So I'm having a hard time reconciling credit in the same paragraph with problem gambling funding. My question is, if you, with this credit, extension of credit, no doubt, and in terms of the federal regulations in filing for bankruptcy, would this be a loan that could be discharged in a bankruptcy, or is it more like a school loan that even if you file bankruptcy, you still have to keep the debt of the school loan?
And I do not know the answer to that question, Representative Morgan, but we can certainly do research for it. One of the things I will point out is the provisions within the appendix is that anyone who is actively self-barred would not be allowed to receive credit.
Now, I am not seeing any further hands, so I'd like to move our agenda so we can hear directly from the chairman of the Suquamish tribe, Leonard FORSMAN, and I think his name is RION RAMIREZ, who is the executive officer. So maybe either or both of you could also address some of the concerns that have been expressed by the members.
Thank you, Chair Kaiser and committee members, for making our presentation today. I understand we might have a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, they should have that.
Okay, here we are. I'm Leonard FORSMAN, ancestral name Agui. I'm chairman of the Suquamish tribe, and we also have our CEO, RION RAMIREZ, of our Port Madison Enterprises, which is the enterprise arm of the Suquamish tribe that's governed by a separate board appointed by council, all tribal members that operate our casino on behalf of the council in consultation with our tribal council on annual plans. So some of the operations questions will have to be handled by RION because we've delegated some of our operations authority to our board, which does a great job, has one council member on there, and that's our setup. So just for your information, let me go to the next slide, please. So we are the Suquamish people, the clear salt water. The traditional language of our people is Lushootseed, once known as Puget Salish, and it's a language that has its roots all up and down the Salish Sea into British Columbia, and also a dialect over on Flathead Lake, which is quite interesting, and that's where the term Salish came from, which has been converted to the term Lushootseed. Chief Seattle was a signatory to the 1855 Treaty of Point Elliott, which established the Port Madison Indian Reservation where we reside today. We live on a checkerboarded reservation, which is challenging at times, but also gives us some opportunities because of the assimilatious policy of the federal government divided our land into allotments, and a lot of it was sold off. So we share our reservation with a lot of Washingtonians of the 23rd District. So we're very proud of our enterprises and the things we've been able to do to restore our culture and our standing amongst the other governments in Kitsap County. We had winter villages, it's Suquamish, Point Boland, Paulsville, Silverdale, Chico, Colby, a number of places throughout Kitsap County, as we know it, most of it today, the Kitsap Peninsula, where our people lived in the wintertime, living on salmon and shellfish and other marine resources, along with deer, elk, roots, berries, etc. Next slide, please. So we just want to give you a feeling for where we are. We're one of the few reservations in the nation that has two sections, one at Suquamish and one section at Indianola. And the reservation was enlarged in 1864 to accommodate the number of people the original reservation under the treaty did not accommodate. And we've also had another enlargement more recently under the Obama administration, where we enlarged our reservation to include the White Horse Golf Course, which is near Kingston and is one of our other enterprises. So you can see where we are in relation to across from Seattle, about 7 miles as the canoe flies, or the canoe flies, but when you're paddling or the crow flies when it's flying. Next slide, please. So we have our Clearwater Casino Resort. Here's an image of it on Agate Pass, which is our homeland here. And the Agate Pass Bridge connects up with Bainbridge Island, and we've started out here in '95 and has since expanded our operations to include a resort and casino and restaurants, etc., and an event center where we have hosted Centennial Court in the past and had great meetings, and continue to look forward to post-pandemic returning to that to the conditions. So I'm going to turn it over to Ryan now to take over from here. Ryan.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks, everybody from the committee. It's truly an honor to be here to present to everybody. In terms of PME, can you go to next slide, please? PME, we've got more than 1,000 employees, pre-pandemic, in fields ranging from information technology to hospitality to construction. The Suquamish Tribe, or the Suquamish-owned company and its subsidiaries, are now the second largest employer in Kitsap, in the Kitsap County area. PME offers very competitive compensation packages, including medical, dental, vision, 401k. As part of the pandemic response, we did offer all of our employees bonuses for COVID bonuses on a quarterly basis. We also, the tribe housed a vaccination center here at the casino, where we've been able to vaccinate over 84% of all of our employees are vaccinated. We also gave every one of our employees the opportunity to have their families vaccinated. I think that's an incredible, commitment to the community that the Suquamish tribe showed. Next slide, please. The benefits of Indian gaming. Indian gaming is governmental gaming. It's, for us here at Suquamish, it allows us to protect our tribal treaty rights, including co-management of natural resources, fund our elders program, our wellness center, which does treat both Indians and non-Indians alike for things like problem gambling. Allows us to fund tribal housing, to fund our early learning center, our tribal school, which is the Chief Kitsap Academy, our youth and fitness center for as well as providing scholarships for higher education, the Suquamish Museum, the House of Awakened Culture, our tribal police, and tribal courts. Next slide, please. In terms of, the benefits of Indian gaming, we've provided over $2.5 million in charitable giving to different communities in the last 5 years. This includes organizations like the Marvin Williams Recreational Center in Bremerton that we're really proud to be a partner with, the Kitsap County Regional Library, the Kitsap Community Foundation, including the Kitsap Strong Initiative. So one of the things that our tribal council has been very committed to is overall wellness. In particular, our chairman has been very active in terms of problem gambling and the like, and our treatment and view of treating the whole family in terms of things is really representative in the Kitsap Strong Initiative. Pandemic relief to the broader community included, we had a vaccination center here, and we offered, the tribe set it up to vaccinate all the Kitsap County teachers and elders in the community here. Again, an incredible opportunity for the tribe to do what it does best in terms of leading in the region for community health. We're also working on and expect to open here shortly in 2021 a regional health center that will be open to all community members, Indian and non-Indian alike. Next up is just a slide on the next slide, please. Next slide up is on responsible and problem gambling. As I said before, Chair FORSMAN is part of the problem gambling task force. We do have a large commitment here at Suquamish in terms of our wellness center. And as I was talking about before, really take a holistic approach in terms of treating the individuals in that clinic. We do offer problem gambling services, including assessments, individual and family group sessions, free to all community members, including non-members of the tribe. And as I said before, the real approach there is really a holistic treatment, because anybody that we've had contact with that has a problem gambling situation, it's usually not simply problem gambling. It's, they may have domestic abuse issues, they may have alcoholism, they may have a lot of different kind of issues going on within their universe and sphere of things. And the tribe takes a real holistic approach at that. And Chairman FORSMAN's a whole lot better at communicating on that than I, but we also, from time to time, also do contribute to the Evergreen Council on Problem Gambling as well. So next slide, please. Last is just, I think Julie did a wonderful job running through this. It's just the additional terms that we're adding. Again, adding terms like that have already been approved for other tribal compacts and that are eligible for the most favored nation provision in terms of, tribes can MFN in these amendments. We chose to go ahead and do it as part of our compact renegotiation, but it updates wager limits, increases our problem gambling contribution, updates our community and charitable contributions. The extension of credit issue that was touched upon earlier for us here at Suquamish, that's not something that we're, looking to aggressively get involved in. We might, we're trying to modernize our compact here. We're trying to allow for us to continue to grow and keep up with the other compacts that have been approved. I don't think there's any community that has been more disenfranchised and taken advantage of than us in terms of Indian country. And we're committed to always treating people fairly and doing things the right way. And the actual amendment, as Julie was talking about, does include the ability to offer credit. It only allows for repayment for 90 days. It's intended only for, folks that go through a fairly exhaustive kind of backgrounding associated with it. It does say that we have to, as part of the compact, we have to follow the federal debt collection laws in that regard. So that's, contractually obligating us to follow those rules associated with things. It also adds registration for our employees to allow it to be a little longer period of time and a little bit different process, more deferring to the tribe, adding options for pilot program on alternative calculation of annual regulatory fees. One of the things that we often get caught in the middle of between the tribe and the state is just how those costs are get incurred and how they get allocated. It creates more of a confrontational relationship at times. And we really feel like that if we can get the state to rely, or the Gambling Commission to rely upon the great work that our well-regulated Indian gaming industry does here at Suquamish in terms of relying on our TGA, the work that they do, if they find issues, they're more than welcome to audit it. But if we're in a position that we can find a better solution for kind of that relationship, we think, that there's a way forward to hopefully make it a little bit more amicable. And I think that covers it for me. So I guess if anybody has, if the committee has any questions for me or Chairman FORSMAN.
Very much, Ryan, and Chairman FORSMAN. Let me just clarify, if I could. The casino currently, the Suquamish Casino currently does offer credit to?
No.
None at all. Okay. So
None.
this will be a new service
Yeah.
that you'll be developing.
And it wouldn't, we're not in a position that we're, we're trying to modernize our compact and keep up with the other amendments that have been done. We could, more favored nation in it through some of the other tribal compacts that have been approved. Once they're approved by the Department of Interior, we did include it in an attempt to more modernize what's going on. But no, we do not have credit currently, and we will slowly move into that arena of things. I think in the way of our operationally, you will see us, have higher betting limits in terms of the $1,000 available for our guests. But the next step up above that requires your own high betting limit room, as well as backgrounding on people. And that's all things that are coming, but are going to be things we do in a thoughtful and systematic way.
Thank you. Senator Conway has a question.
Yeah, since this issue of extension of credit has come up, I think it's important to understand a lot of this has come in the context of a high roller room that has been part of many of our major casinos, and that the idea of extending credit has really been driven by that high roller room. Is that true, Mr. Ramirez?
Yes, sir, Senator Conway. The real intent of it is so that our high rollers, as we continue to grow in terms of the industry, aren't forced to carry around thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. It puts them in a position that they can have credit available in terms of doing it in that fashion, so we don't have these people being put in a position of being robbed or putting their lives at risk in that regard. I understand the questions that have been raised associated with treating people fairly. I think anybody that's dealt with us at the Suquamish tribe, that's one of the things that our tribal government is very committed to, is doing things the right way. And you have our commitment that we will treat and do this the right way as well. There's nothing to be gained by not doing it the right way. When we step out as tribal governments and do the businesses and the work that we do, we represent all the membership and all of our ancestors in that regard. And so, we're very committed to doing things the right way.
Thank you very much, Brian and Chair Forsman. I see no other hands at this time. Is that correct, Susan?
Rep. Kloba just raised her hand.
Okay, Representative Kloba. You need to unmute, Representative Kloba.
I can't believe we got this far in the meeting without you having to say that. So I'm glad I could be the one. I guess I do want to thank Chair Forsman and Mr. Ramirez with explaining that understanding. It is what I have gathered from the times that I have spoken with tribal members with regard to gambling and the casinos that you operate, that you're not in the business of exploiting someone's difficulty or their challenge when it comes to problem gambling. And so I do respect that. And I hear what you're saying with regard to fairness, et cetera, and your intention is really about the safety of the customer and the safety of your facility, and not, leaving people as targets who are coming to use your high roller rooms. The reality is also that I think some of the tribes have gotten into this business. Many of them, just from a quick glance, don't actually have the kinds of opportunities that our tribes here in Washington have with regard to the casinos that sort of, spur on the rest of their economic development. The Port Madison Enterprises is quite diverse now and very successful, but can you tell me, just in the mechanics of offering credit, does the Port Madison Enterprises expect that they would start a separate company that would be a lender, or how does the mechanics of that, how do you see that working?
Functionally, the credit would be offered through PME. I mean, we haven't put it in place and we haven't gotten that far yet. Like I said, we're going to be slow in that process. We're not the largest casino in the state. I would say we're, in the middle there in terms of the size of our casino and clientele. So it would be us under the compact. We do agree to follow, applicable federal debt laws. We're going to treat people fairly in that regard. There's nothing to be gained by doing anything short of that in terms of there are, like you said, other tribes, and the payday lending situation is one that has been within Indian country, not so much in Washington State. I mean, I don't think you can find anybody in Washington State that has been partaking in any of that, but tribal governments are tribal governments and are the third sovereign within the Constitution. There's the states, there's the federal government, and there's the tribal governments. If you believe in the Constitution, you believe in tribal governments. We are a manifestation within the Constitution. And, tribes are going to do the best they can to care for their community. And those tribes and what they're doing, I'm not intimately involved with, and I'm not, an expert on it in terms of the payday lending situation. So I can only speak for the work that we do here at Suquamish and that our tribal government does. And our tribal government holds us to an exceptionally high standard. And, not only does the tribal government, but the over, 1,300 members hold us to an exceptionally high standard. We go on an annual basis. We do, for good, bad, or indifferent, an annual plan presentation that we go through with the community in terms of soup to nuts, in terms of what our plan is for CapEx, what our plan is for development, what our plan is for everything. And our community is incredibly involved, incredibly strong-willed, incredibly committed to us doing things the right way. So I can assure you that if it wouldn't be a problem for them to hold us accountable along with the tribal government in that regard. I mean, I don't know if you have anything to echo there, Chairman FORSMAN.
Well, I was just going to add that we are generally hostile towards third parties. So when we opened, we took us a while because we were doing it ourselves, and we weren't going to accept a third party because of some of the things we'd heard about happening with other tribes. So it would be a real break from tradition for us to go to a third party. So I don't expect that to happen at all. So thank you.
All right, thank you, and I appreciate you letting me grill you that way. I'm very glad to see that the integrity you display is exactly what I have seen so far and would expect to see. So thank you. I appreciate the conversation.
And thank you for your questions, and thank you for ultimately for your commitment for all of us within the state.
Excellent. That's wonderful to hear. I'm glad we had a thorough discussion of this amendment, and I very much appreciate your presenting to us. And perhaps we'll see you again here shortly, because this hearing will now segue, I guess, into other compact amendments having to do with sports wagering. And we'll bring back for this portion of the hearing the State Gambling Commission Interim Director, Tina Griffin again, as well as Julie Lees, Tribal Liaison, Bud Sizemore, one of the commissioners, as well as, of course, the Legislative Manager, Brian Considine. And I know they all have another PowerPoint for us.
Madam Chair, it's a continuation of the presentation we have here. So
okay, Before you go into your PowerPoint, let me just pose a few questions for you or Brian, and maybe your presentation covers it, but when I read the compact amendments, I had some questions because I'm a newbie to some of this business, and I don't know what a layoff wager is. I don't quite understand what a nonprofit kiosk would be, and I'm really curious about future technology issues. So I don't know if your presentation addresses those three things, but I'd like to have a little better understanding of those three things by the time we're done. Thank you very much.
I'm sure that we can do that. This slide and the next slide is just to let you know what we're going to be doing with Suquamish's non-sports wagering Fifth Amendment, knowing that we're going to have a commission meeting in June. And next slide, please. If the public would like to provide comments, there's the email that they can provide comments via email, or they can attend the public meeting. Next slide, please. And with that, I am going to introduce Brian Considine, our legal and legislative manager, and he will go through a little bit of background first, and then I will be back to go over the provisions.
Thank you, Julie. And Madam Chair, is Brian Considine, legal and legislative manager for the Gambling Commission. Nice to see everyone. Senator Kaiser, just so that I wrote down the first two and then my mind went blank. So layoff wagers, nonprofit kiosks, and what was the third one? My apologies.
Future technology. There's a section on future technology that seemed very vague to me.
Nope. I hope we'll get through it, but if we don't, we'll circle back to that.
Follow up with me. That's fine.
Next slide, please. Thank you. So it's been several months since March of 2020 when the bill was passed and signed into law. So felt it was good to just give a quick refresher as to what the legislature passed in House Bill 2638. It gave sports wagering to tribes through Class 3 compact process, and we are appreciative as the Gambling Commission. We had our 5 pillars, and we asked the legislature to consider those 5 pillars, and they were front and center in both what would be negotiated, but also throughout the Gambling Act changes. So those are the areas, as you can see on the slide, related to licensing and fees, how it would be conducted, operated, regulated, criminal enforcement, including money laundering and sport integrity, which I know were both important to you, Madam Chair, both Madam Chairs, and of course, responsible and problem gambling. Next slide, please. And also felt it was helpful to kind of, in the questions that I've received over the last many weeks and months, hit on kind of where we are with what's allowed and what's not allowed going in, what was allowed or not allowed kind of going into the compact amendments. And I think it's always a good start where we have our state constitution, which prohibits all forms of gambling unless expressly authorized by the legislature. And so from the Gambling Commission perspective and how we look at things, and you've heard me say this before, so we can, continue to make sure gambling is legal and honest, is that if the legislature hasn't expressly addressed it, then we believe it's always prohibited because of how the Constitution sets that dynamic up. So what was, where we are at both is what was expressly discussed and then maybe what was omitted, and that's where I come from. So what was authorized were professional sports, collegiate sports, except for in-state colleges, Olympic international sports, esports, and then mobile internet as an additional avenue of wagering mobile internet on tribal casino premises. Prohibited as part of what was defined as authorized sports wagering, it omitted high school and youth sports. I don't believe the legislature meant to have wagering on those as it is. Then, of course, prohibits in-state collegiate sports and events, wagering on that, prohibits wagering on minor league sports. Fantasy sports is not expressly addressed in the legislation, so we believe that's also prohibited. From a pay, of course, free fantasy sports or any sort of free activities is fine. And then mobile internet off tribal casino premises as defined in compact. And then also what was important to the Gambling Commission, and I know that our tribal partners as well, was additional criminal integrity provisions, additional updating and enhancements, modernization, if you will, in the Gambling Act related to money laundering and professional gambling, and also related to match fixing and contest manipulation. I believe we may be one of the only, if not the only, states to really focus on updating our laws so that we have a much stronger framework to deal with black market and illegal activities. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions if there's questions about the background. Otherwise, I think Julie is next with the slide. So you can go to the next slide if there aren't any questions. Yep, that's all, Julie. Thank you, Madam Chair.
That was speedy, Brian. Thank you. So again, for the record, my name is Julie Lease, Tribal Liaison for the Gambling Commission. What I have before you today is a summary of the provisions of the sports wagering amendments. We have 4 different amendments and appendices from 4 different tribes. We have several tribes that have agreed to language similar to Suquamish, but today we just have the 4 tribes that we negotiated with that will be able to provide comments and answer questions in a bit. As I mentioned, each amendment and appendix looks a little bit different. We worked really hard to ensure the fundamental policy issues were the same for all 4. And in the next few slides, what you'll see is the 5 pillars that were in the bill and that moved into the RCW. And these are done in order. And Madam Chair, I will try and answer some of your questions as I go. And if I don't get to them, remind me and we'll cover it at the end. This is a very high level summary. And what you'll see in this is that if there's anything that's in italics, that is the language that might be slightly different between the amendments. We just wanted to point that out to you. All right, with that, so the first thing on this slide is licensing. So we have created 3 new vendor types for sports wagering, a major, a mid-level, and an ancillary. This is designed in a structure to kind of the major are those vendors that are maybe a higher risk or more involved in the operation or providing advice to the tribe on how to operate. Mid-level are the ones that are still, good size risk, are involved in a lot of things, but maybe aren't as involved as the major. And the ancillary are the ones like people that may help out with payment methods and things like that, that only happen occasionally. All gaming employees and other non-sports wagering vendors will follow the compact process. On fees, the certification fees, and those are the fees for the vendors, will be outlined in the WAC and the rule process. And then the startup fees will be prorated for all the tribes that are basically operating sports wagering as of March 30, 2023. So you look at that date and you say, that's a long ways out. What this fee is the cost it took, or the cost that were incurred for negotiating, developing rules, developing programs, all of that, all of those costs that were related to get us basically here today and to implementation. So that will be shared equally amongst all the tribes. The 2023 is because those costs right now are coming out of the fund balance or the loan that was provided to our agency, and we need to repay that loan in June of 2023. So we need to make sure we could recover those costs by then.
Excuse me, Julie. Senator Schessler has a question.
Oh, good.
Senator Schessler?
Yes, I may have jumped the gun, or I may have been slow beginning. The question I have, and it may be answered to some degree later, and that is the online portion. Geofences, as I study this, it's not just the casino, it's land under control or amenities. I mean, can you do a mobile bet from the park, drive into the parking lot and bet, or the parking garage? You can't do it on a golf course, but how do you come to a geofence and where online betting is allowed?
Okay. I have it on the next slide. Can I wrap up the startup fees and then we'll go to the next
Please, and
slide,
if
Senator?
if I may want to have a follow-up question.
I understand. Let's go ahead, wrap this up and then go to the next slide for that.
So the language for startup fees in italics is that in 3 of the 4 amendments, there is an agreement that if all the tribes agree to some sort of alternative distribution other than equal share, we will go ahead and distribute startup fees in that way. So next slide, please. All right, so for sports wagering, there's basically three locations that sports wagering can occur. It's at a sports book within the gaming facility. So you think about that as your window going up and placing the bet, or there may be a kiosk that's located on the gaming floor that could be part of that sports book. Then we have kiosks that would be probably near the sports book or somewhere in the gaming facility or the gaming floor. And then there can also be kiosks that are within the premises. So imagine an event center and they're having some event related to a sporting event, they could put a kiosk in that event center. And then the third option for making wagers is mobile within the premises and geofenced. So the first part, so premises of the gaming facility means the gaming facility, so the gaming floor, and any adjacent or adjoining amenities. So if you think about the walls of the building that the casino is located, so things like hotels, restaurants, entertainment spaces, parking garages, those types of things are all, in some cases, within those walls. So a mobile bet could be placed within that space. Premises also includes parking lots and other improved areas that may be outside the building. However, we carved out specifically convenience stores that are not connected to the facility and golf courses.
So just to have Senator Sessler follow up, he still has a concern here.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Julie. As I recall the legislation from a year ago, we all knew that it would legalize sports books within the gaming facility. That was commonly agreed upon, kiosks in the facility and the premises. This expansion of mobile within premises and geofence seems to be an expansion or change from the legislation.
So we did have a lot of discussions about premises of the gaming facility. So what we went to was a Black's Law Dictionary definition of premises of the gaming facility. That definition includes adjoining or adjacent items to a particular building. And so we're looking at, it has to still be Indian lands. It still has to be within that property boundary of the gaming facility. So you can't have it everywhere on the reservation. It has to be very closely connected to that gaming facility. And, but we specifically carved out those non-adjoining convenience stores and golf courses.
Representative Vick has a question as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A two-parter, I believe. The first would be, is there a definition of adjacent? I mean, some of these reservations can be fairly large, so does it actually have to touch, you know, the casino itself? And then the second question would be, is there any other type of gambling that's allowed this way? Can you have blackjack in the parking garage? Can you have poker in the park? Or is this going to be standalone for sports wagering?
So adjacent, when we looked at that, adjacent and adjoining, we did spend a lot of time looking at that language. It needs to be connecting to that gaming facility. So we were making sure that there wasn't some sort of extension of that. So if the casino is attached to the parking lot, but then there's this other building that's on the other side of the parking lot, you know, the parking lot is adjacent and adjoining, not the other buildings, if that makes sense. Sports wagering is a unique gaming activity. So this type of premises definition would not apply to other gaming activities like blackjack or the machines, because they have to be within the facility and there's other parameters around them. This activity is only related to the mobile portion of sports wagering. So being able to have an app on your phone, you've been vetted in person, and you can place a bet as long as you're within this boundary. Does that help, Representative Vick?
And we have a couple more questions as well, Julie. So moving on to Senator King and then Representative Chambers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as I understand what you're trying to explain here, you know, one of the things we heard when we heard this bill was this is going to be in the casino. We when you looked at the non-tribal, the discussion was all about, well, this will be just a great expansion if we do this, and there's no control. Kids will be available. There's no control over the youth using this. All of these things, and the implication was that this would only be done in the casino, and that was the way I interpreted it. But now with this expansion, you're telling me, I mean, to me, this is a huge expansion. And my question is, how can you not consider being able to gamble in a parking lot or in a parking garage or in a entertainment venue? Because there's going to be young people there. How are you going to determine who's actually making the bet and whose phone are they using and all of these things? I mean, this, to me, the way this is worded and the way that you're describing this is a huge expansion of gambling, but only on tribal lands. Do you have an explanation for how you don't consider this a huge expansion?
So for the wagering, about knowing who is going to be wagering, the sports book, the actual physical book where you walk up and place a bet with a person, or the kiosks are still within the gaming facility or the building where the gaming is being conducted. The mobile piece is the only piece that we're looking at as being outside into parking lots and parking garages. And that mobile piece has some other criteria that's involved as far as verification of the mobile device, verification of that there's a person that's behind that mobile account. As far as the on-premise gaming, you're going to have surveillance and you're going to have people watching, and there's going to be some verification of who's placing the bets on the mobile. It's going to be part of whose phone it is and being able to place those bets.
Representative Chambers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the presentation, but I have a couple of questions. Because I'm trying to look at this as my experience as a consumer, and what is your definition of adjoining amenities? I think I may have gone to a tribal hotel and casino, and they have adjoining shopping next door. Does that count as adjoining? Am I going to see, when you have a family that's there shopping, not necessarily going into the four walls of the casino, are they going to see kiosks in those adjoining shopping areas? Because my experience as a customer in those areas is that the hotel advertises those other amenities, shopping and things like that, as amenities to the hotel and the nearby casino. So how does that square?
So the amenities, the adjoining and adjacent amenities, the ones that you see in the parentheses are the ones that we're looking at: hotels, restaurants, conference centers. Those are within that space of the building. So the wagering would still happen within the buildings. There are some places and some of the tribes that we've talked to that may have separate shopping centers and all of that, that's not part of the premises. However, if there is within that building, because of the way things are geofenced, if they have like a gift shop and you want to place a mobile bet on your phone in the gift shop, that would be possible. But like if you're thinking of a separate like convenience store, that's part of the reason those were carved out. You're not going to see a kiosk at a convenience store that's completely separate from the gaming facility where people can place bets.
Okay, so, but let's say an outlet mall is not specifically excluded like you have excluded golf courses with this language.
We have not specifically excluded outlet malls, but we don't have any outlet malls that are adjacent or adjoining.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Senator King.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to follow up. So what you're telling me is if I'm in a garage and I'm using a phone, the only way you can track who's actually making that bet is the fact that that mobile account is assigned to somebody.
It's assigned to that particular device, correct?
Yeah, that device, and the assumption there is that's somebody that's 21 and meets all that criteria, but it doesn't stop somebody that's 18 or 19 that has their father's phone from making a bet, whether their father knows it or not, or maybe he does, but still they're able to do it. And I thought the legislation said that the Washington State gambling footprint would not be expanded, but it appears to me that this is a huge expansion. Care to comment on that? I mean, it's like I'm concerned about who can actually place the bet. I don't care who has the account or not. If you're sitting in a garage, you don't know who made that bet. That's my concern. And then, you know, what the law, I'm going to have to go back and look at what the actual legislation said. But this is a huge expansion of the footprint of being outside the casino, in my opinion. Thank you.
Yes. So, Senator, with mobile wagering, knowing who the person is through that application or that device, they will, once they apply or fill out the information on their application on their phone, they have to come in and be physically verified in the casino. Who has that phone and who's placing the bets is not going to be different if they were inside the building or in the parking lot, because they're still going to be on the mobile device, and we're not how that person would be identified is still through that mobile device. Other thing I want to make sure is clear is that the compact has a gambling age of 18, so you could have individuals that are between 18 and 21 that are gaming. And 18 is the state law for gaming.
Well, let me also allow Commissioner Sizemore to comment. I believe he had his hand up and is on the panel here.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to express to all of the committee members from both the Senate and the House that this was a very difficult area for the commission to kind of contemplate, express our concerns, but ultimately with the language that was in the RCW and the definition of premises and the legislation, we were, I guess I want to say, a little bit stuck with bargaining in good faith to the definition that the legislature put forward for places where mobile would be allowed. So I don't believe that the Gambling Commission has expanded gambling or the footprint at all, other than trying to accomplish our responsibilities from the legislature to really wrap that definition and actually, make it feasible. And that's with, multiple different geographic layouts for casinos around the state. And I want to express, just so the committee is fully aware that this was a very difficult area, and ultimately was an area that in order to continue to bargain in good faith, we couldn't ignore the legal definition of premises. So thank you.
Appreciate that comment, Commissioner Sizemore. Julie, let's move on to the presentation. We'll have more questions.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So to finish out this slide, any servers that are related to sports wagering will have to be within the gaming facility. And if the tribe chooses to use some sort of cloud storage for backup data, that cloud storage has to be located in Washington. Next slide, please. So authorized wagering menu, we have agreed, the tribes will, and the state will mutually agree on a jurisdiction that already has approved wagers out there. An example is possibly Colorado or New Jersey. What we're trying to do is take what's already been approved and populate that list now with what's already been approved elsewhere. And then after that initial list is populated, the Tribal Gaming Agency, or TGA, is going to approve any kind of additional wagers, and they'll send them to the State Gaming Agency, or SGA, for review and possible addition to this sports wagering menu. So the sports wagering menu will have a list of all authorized wagers that are available in the state. And our plan is to have that on our website and available for the tribes and others to see. On prohibited wagers, I'm sure, as you all know, that the collegiate sport events involving collegiate institutions located within Washington, that's prohibited, as well as minor league sports, which things you're looking at are like baseball minor league or hockey minor league. And then, of course, any events that the outcome has already been determined, they won't be able to take bets on that. And then TLALEP has a specific specific set of language or specific provision that talks about underage participants. And because the Olympics is one of those competitions that would be allowed, and many of those participants, say like in gymnastics, are underage, as long as it's regulated by some sort of sports governing body or somebody that regulates that activity, then they can take wagers on that event. Any questions? Next slide, please. There was a lot of discussion about bracket pools and how to, what kind of wagers would be allowed when you remove Washington collegiate teams from a tournament. So this is the most recent March Madness. If you start on the right-hand side, you'll see that there's two red circles with an X through them. Mm-hmm. One is for Gonzaga and one is for Eastern. So for this particular event, or this tournament, because we have two Washington colleges involved in this tournament, you could not bet on the Western bracket because they're involved in that particular bracket. You could take wagers on the outcome of the Southern bracket, Midwest bracket, or Eastern bracket. Once Gonzaga moved forward, then you couldn't place a bet on that particular event. When you move forward, you could take bets on the other opposite side, the game on the other side, but not the one that Gonzaga is involved in. Then you move in, Gonzaga move forward. You couldn't place a bet on that game. Then you get to the next one to decide the Western bracket. Couldn't take a wager on that because Gonzaga is involved. And also because Gonzaga moved forward, you could not bet on that half of the Final Four. And because Gonzaga was in the final game, you would not be able to place a bet on the championship for March Madness. So this graphic, I think, helped me kind of understand where you could place bets and where you couldn't for bracket pools related to colleges. Any questions about this?
No hands up.
It looks like maybe Representative Kloba.
Oh, go ahead, Representative Kloba.
Yes, thank you. So this, I think I understand this. And so just to get a little more detailed, Julie, as I look at, so I understood the first round, the Western Division, that would not be something I would be able to place a wager on. But then say in the second round, the Oregon versus Iowa matchup, is that something that would be available for me to bet on there on the left-hand side there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So once a Washington team is not involved in that particular matchup of two teams, then that is permissible. Anything where there's a Washington team specifically, then you can't. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Do I see any other hands? I don't.
Next slide, please. So prohibited participants from the wagering activity, all appendices specifically prevent proxy or agents, proxy bets or agents that'll place bets on your behalf. What we're looking at is somebody parking themselves at the casino, taking phone calls and placing bets for individuals, not doing that. Also, who would be prohibited is athletes, players, coaches, managers, anybody who has access to non-public information about a particular sport or holds a position of authority over those events or could somehow undermine the integrity of the game. So this was specifically related to the integrity piece. TLALIP has a specific provision in their appendix that prohibits wagering from folks that are on the self-exclusion list. The other tribes are including that in their internal controls. For the system itself, the criteria and how the system should operate will be set by the standards of GLI, and their particular standard is 33. So GLI is an independent test lab that's located, they're located in Nevada and other locations, and they provide testing and assurances worldwide. Once the ITL or independent test lab tests to the GLI standards, then that system will be approved by TGA, the Tribal Gaming Agency, and then we'll coordinate training with the Tribal Gaming Agency and State Gaming Agency at agreed upon locations. And what that means is that, if the equipment is in Nevada and that's where we need to go to get hands on to that equipment and learn about the equipment, then that's where we would go. If we can have it shipped to our lab, it may come to our lab. It may be on site at the tribe's location where we could get training.
Same kind of system, Julie, that other states that have sports gambling are using?
Absolutely. And that is why we're going with the GLI 33, because that is the common testing standard. And once it's tested by the independent test lab, TGA is going to review it. It is not a unique system to Washington.
Okay. I don't see any hands.
Perfect. Next slide, please. So house rules, these are the rules that you notify the customers of, what parameters they're playing under. So they will post those rules for the patrons, and then house rule information is generally part of internal controls, which is approved by TGA, and we concur with or agree with TGA's approval. For reserve, this is the making sure that the tribe and the casino specifically can cover the liabilities that are related to the sports wagering bets they accept. On player accounts, this is something that's required for mobile. They may be able to use what's called a digital wallet to fund that player account, but that digital wallet is not something that's connected to other gaming at this point. And if you were to look at the amendment, there was a specific paragraph related to potentially connecting that in the future.
Julie, can I ask if someone registers at one casino and then goes to another casino, do they have to register at the other casino too, or is it intertribal, if you would, between casinos?
They would need to register at each casino.
Okay.
Each casino is going to have their own contained system, the way that this is written.
Okay.
So the PII, or personal identifiable information, that's that very confidential information, and so the tribes will be protecting that. There may be opportunities or not opportunities, there may be times where because of an investigation for anti-money laundering or integrity issues, that investigators will request the PII, but in general, the tribe will need to protect that from unauthorized use or access. And then internal controls, there's a lot of the detail of how they're going to operate that are going to be in the tribe's internal controls. And those, as I mentioned above, the Tribal Gaming Agency will approve those internal controls from the operations, and then we will concur with those ICs, or internal controls. Next slide, please. For the criminal enforcement provisions, there's a cap on what we call anonymous wagering of $2,000. What that means is that if you go to a window and you place a $2,000 bet, they're going to ask for identification and identify you as a player. Same thing with the kiosks. If you try and place a bet of $2,000 at a kiosk, you're going to have to go to a window, or you're going to have a player account or some way of identifying you as the person placing the bet. And this is related to the anti-money laundering and prevention of that. A player account, so the piece that we verified of who's playing, is going to be required for all off the gaming floor kiosks. So those are the ones that are not on the gaming floor itself, but maybe are located in the event center, for example, that we talked about earlier. And then there's a lot of federal requirements related to anti-money laundering, which the tribes already follow. And this appendix reiterated that those are the ones that they will continue to follow, and they will include how they follow those in their internal controls.
Senator Schessler has a question.
Thank you, Chair Kaiser. The anonymous wagers up to $1,999. How do we make sure that they are not on the prohibited list, or underage, or problem gamblers, or other things if you can wager that much?
So the the kiosks and so on the gaming floor, you have the sports book or the cashier, and then the kiosks. That gaming floor is already monitored for underage folks because they have other activities like table games and the machines on the gaming floor. So that area is monitored for underage. The as far as the problem gambling piece, there is, if they're self-excluded, there will be a self-exclusion list, and the internal controls, I think there was, I'm pulling this from memory, where they will be checking to see if somebody is on the self-exclusion list, so they are not allowed to wager. And then for the underage, or sorry, for the prohibited participants, there is some knowledge of who that is. And I know that the integrity providers and the sports governing bodies are working on trying to find a more comprehensive list for folks so that can be prohibited. But there are different pieces in place that would catch those types of folks.
Well, I guess, it comes back to me on the prohibited list.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a referee in the Pac-12,
right,
or the West Coast Athletic Conference, you probably have more insight. And I would suspect not a single member of these committees would identify a Pac-12 or West Coast Conference referee. So this seems inconsistent.
So there are those, so the next on the list, you see integrity monitoring provider. Those are the folks that are going to be helping the casino with identifying those types of things. There's lists that they have, there's algorithms that they have that they will be using to help the gaming operation identify those individuals that should not be wagering on the activity.
Julia, I'm going to need you to move along because we're getting a little tight on time. We have a lot of presentation from the tribes still.
Yes, Madam Chair. As I mentioned, the integrity provider that's going to be, they're going to be tracking through algorithms, and then they're going to also notify the state gaming agency on suspicious wagering. For info sharing, there's requirements of sharing information that are outlined in the RCW, and so that the tribes will be providing that info as requested. Next slide, please. And this is the fifth and final pillar related to responsible gaming and problem gambling. So the net win from sports wagering will be included in the contribution calculation. There's going to be annual training and a policy creation for responsible gaming if the tribe doesn't already have that. For mobile and player accounts, they will need to be able to offer self-imposed limits for the patrons so they can identify time limits or possibly spending limits. For mobile and for kiosks, there has to be a display. So on the application on mobile or on the kiosks, display of a commitment to responsible gaming, which could include the phone numbers, know your limits, basically the information that someone would need if they wanted to check in if they thought they had a problem. There's also the statewide self-exclusion. The law for that said that the tribes could opt in. We're just making sure that there's that nod to they will consider participating. And then the problem gambling task force is, again, when that task force comes out, consider the results of that task force and possible implementation. The only difference in this particular one is the Kalispell has the Camas Path. It's a well-established, long-standing program that has dealt with just health in general, but also specifically problem gambling. And for the self-imposed limits, they are going to be using the best practices based on their behavioral health providers' advice. And with that, next slide.
Thank you very much, Julie. This is a difficult issue. You have worked very long and hard on this. I know the negotiations have been tough, and I very much appreciate the presentation. I'm going to ask to move along, however, because we really have quite a few presentations to hear.
Senator Kaiser, Senator King has his hand raised.
Who?
Senator King.
Senator King, quickly, please.
I will be quick, Madam Chair. So I want to go back, common areas. Would that include a park that's part of the casino? So you go out and have a picnic and that kind of thing? Or would it include, if there, a lot of these casinos have an area where your kids can go play. I'm assuming that you would be able to gamble from that point.
Using their mobile account,
yes.
They would be able to place wagers in like a developed area that's outside. So outside seating for restaurants, those types of things, yes.
Madam Chair, so when we heard this bill, we heard from numerous places and numerous groups, including the tribes and the WIGA, that tribal sports betting would not include mobile betting beyond the casino itself. It seems to me that what you're allowing here and what's in these compacts goes way beyond what any of us would consider the casino itself. Thank you, Madam Chair, for letting me comment.
Thank you, Senator King. Now we're going to go into the individual presentations because we have, I believe, 5, and each are supposed to have 10 minutes, and we're kind of short on time. Let me call Terry Gobin, Chairwoman of the Tulalip Tribes.
Hey, hello, good morning.
Hi.
Good morning, committee members. My name is Terry Gobin. I'm the Chairwoman of the Tulalip Tribes. I want to thank Chair Kaiser and Chair Kloba for holding this hearing on the Tribal State Gaming Compact Amendment that allows the Tulalip Tribes to offer sports wagering to its customers on tribal lands. The Tulalip Tribes want to thank the Washington State Gambling Commission and staff and fellow tribes who worked hard on hard to draft sports wagering compact terms that will maintain a strong regulatory environment for Class 3 gaming in Washington State. I would also like to thank you all for supporting H.R. 2638, the bill that authorizes Indian tribes to offer sports wagering to Washingtonians. In 1992, Tulalip signed the first gaming compact in Washington State. At this time, the state of Washington recognized and respected tribal sovereignty, but also understood the positive economic gains and benefits tribal gaming would bring for all of Washington State. Today, all 29 tribes participate at some level in tribal government gaming. The positive impact and economic growth of tribal government gaming, not only on our reservations, but throughout the surrounding communities in Washington State, is tremendous. Tribal government gaming creates the opportunity to provide fundamental services to our communities, building and bolstering tribal governments, creating health and human services programs, education systems, and the ability to protect the environment. We invest in much needed infrastructure, building water systems, wastewater treatment facilities, roads, overpasses, electrical broadband networks, and much more. Gaming dollars, however, do not only benefit Native tribes. In 2019, Jonathan Taylor published The Economic and Community Benefits of Tribes in Washington report to quantify tribal investments and contributions to Washington State as a direct result of tribal gaming. What the report indicated was that tribal governments in Washington State are investing in their people, their infrastructure, land, and communities to the extent unlike we ever had in the past and unmatched by other governments in the state. I will read just a few findings from this report.
Terry, truly, we are really tight on time and have so many other tribes to present. I wonder, we have seen that report before. I wonder if you could speak to the sports wagering issue with your tribe to the committee, please.
Okay. So the Washington tribes are also making direct investments to support local governments and charitable contributions, regularly contributing to outside nonprofit organizations, and in Washington State to support a variety of service programs such as food banks, school districts, first responders, and homeless shelters. And with this increased amount of money that will be coming in, we will continue to do that. To date, Tulalip alone has contributed $65 million to nonprofits and organizations throughout the state of Washington. Additionally, Tulalip has contributed $45 million above and beyond what was required in this compact. We give because we care and want to help others. We must not forget that the gaming revenues are generated here in Washington State, stay here in Washington State, helping to grow, build, and rebuild our communities, both tribal and non-tribal. It is without a doubt that Washington State and its citizens benefit tremendously from the tribal gaming. And these benefits will continue to grow as we generate additional revenues in sports wagering. As the primary day-to-day gaming regulators on the ground, tribal governments and the regulatory bodies have the greatest interest in safety and industry that has greatly contributed to invaluable improvements in our communities and Washington State. It is a testament to the leadership of our tribal governments, our tribal members, and the work of our dedicated employees that the Indian gaming industry has remained protected and stable. This will remain true with sports wagering. We look forward to this continued partnership with the state of Washington. And once again, I would like to thank you all for giving me this time and for support during this process. Thank you. Tigwitsi.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman Gobin. I very much appreciate your presentation and your work. And I know this was a very difficult negotiation, so we understand. We're moving on to a presentation. This will be from the Suquamish tribe, who we heard from earlier on their other compact. I believe that Chair FORSMAN is returning, as well as RION Ramirez. And they, I believe, will be speaking to the other tribes that are using the same language. So perhaps you could enlighten us.
Yes, good, well, we're almost good afternoon. Good morning yet again. Unfortunately, Chairman Forsman had to join another meeting. Yeah. And so unfortunately, you're stuck with me. So my name is RION Ramirez. I am the CEO for Port Madison Enterprises, which is the economic development arm of the Suquamish tribe. Again, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with the joint committee today, and I'm going to do a brief overview of our fourth amendment on sports wagering. So, next slide, please. Our fourth amendment, we worked as a Suquamish tribe in collaboration with a group of 8 other tribes, 9 of us in total, including Suquamish, during the negotiations, receiving input from those tribes with large, small casino properties from a diverse geographic region, including both Eastern and Western Washington and rural and urban areas. So far, in total, counting Suquamish, we've had 12 tribal governments sign on to adopt our version of Appendix S, our original small group in terms of the folks that we worked with included Colville, Cowlitz, Jamestown, Muckleshoot, Puyallup, Spokane, Stillaguamish, and Suquamish. And so all of their attorneys, lobbyists, leadership, and you know, I just want to say thank you to them for all their hard work in terms of working with us, as well as to the Gambling Commission, the commissioners, the late, I'm not saying not late, but since the departed Dave Trujillo, Tina, Julie, all the staff that were involved in terms of Sharon and Brian. You know, thank you for your good work, and thank you for the time and commitment to working through this process. Next slide. The Compact Amendment allows Washington tribes to offer sports wagering to Washingtonians without major gambling and within Washington framework of governmental gaming and charitable gaming. Appendix X aligns, or Appendix S aligns with intent and directive of the authorizing legislation and all the pillars. Sports wagering look and feel the same because it's all contained with our tribal properties in that regard. Next slide. It was important to Suquamish and its working group that the amendment not reinvent the wheel. So we really focused on other jurisdictions and looking at what is working in those other jurisdictions in terms of working with the state. Appendix S and the amendment align with the industry standards and best practices. And we're really proud of the work that we were able to accomplish together with the tribes working with us, as well as the other 11 tribes so far that have signed on in terms of our Appendix S amendment. So that's it for me. And
let's just confirm the tribes that have signed on. I'm getting a little confused about the numbers to your Appendix S.
So in terms of ours, the folks that have signed on are Colville, Cowlitz, Jamestown, Lummi, Muckleshoot, Puyallup, Shoalwater Bay, Spokane, Squaxin Island, Stillaguamish, Suquamish.
Thank you. I
Yes, ma'am.
appreciate that list. We're going to move on now to the Snoqualmie tribe, which has a presentation by the Snoqualmie Casino CEO, Stanford Lee. Mr. Lee, are you here?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Joint Committee. For the record, my name is Stanford Lee, and I'm the CEO of Snoqualmie Casino, and I've been asked to speak today on behalf of the Snoqualmie tribe. As we did meet a couple months ago on a different topic of the tribal compact, I'll just briefly touch on the high points in the interest and respect of everybody's time. For those who are not familiar, the Snoqualmie tribe is one of the many tribes constituting the Coast Salish of Washington's Puget Sound region, with Snoqualmie Falls as the birthplace of the Snoqualmie people. It lost its federal recognition in 1953 and through significant struggle regained that recognition in 1999. Today, the tribe has 500 members governed by an elected council and tribal constitution. Through its 1,700 member tribal enterprise, the Snoqualmie tribe promotes its tribal values of sovereignty and protection of sacred places. And further, through that work, which includes the casino's work, it supports education, elderly programs, housing, cultural programs, and surrounding community programs. I'm proud to announce that since the last time we've met, we've actually opened and vaccinated over 10,000 community members, starting with a clinic that we opened at the casino, which vaccinated about 3,400 community members, and then vaccinating 7,000 more at a drive-through clinic at Lake Suquamish State Park. So we're very proud of those contributions. And the work of the casino and what we stand to gain from the sports wagering helps us to continue those community programs. And because of that, what we'd like to do is thank the State Gaming Work Group, the Snoqualmie Gaming Commission, and the casino team members who worked hard to get us to this point. And finally, I'd like to thank the Joint Committee today for the discussion, and thank you. And I'll pause here for any questions. As we said, we want to respect everybody's time.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. I very much appreciate that. I don't see any questions at this time, so let's move the agenda to the Kalispell. And we have Nick Pierre and Kevin Zenishek. I'm sorry if I've butchered your name, Mr. Zenishek, from the Kalispell.
Thank you. I'm Nick Pierre, Kalispell tribal member. I currently sit on the council, and I'm also general manager of Northern Quest Resort Casino.
And is Nick Pierre here too?
I'm Nick. I'm just under Kevin's.
Oh, I see. Okay. Thank you.
Go to the next slide. So Kalispell tribe was recognized in 1914 by an executive order signed by President Woodrow Wilson. The order established a 4,600 acre reservation located adjacent to the Pend Oreille River in northeastern Washington. Our land is mostly floodplain and steep, rocky foothills. We once had an ancestral land of 4 million acres, which included western Montana, northern Idaho, eastern Washington, and British Columbia. Currently, we're around, this says 470, but we just had a few recent enrollments, so we're in the 480s. 34% of the membership is under the age of 18. Our tribal elders are the smallest demographic currently. Next slide, please. Gaming revenue is the government's main source of funding. Currently, we have 2 casinos, and they have raised the standard of living for all of our tribal members. Up until Northern Quest was built, the reservation did not have suitable drinking water. It was full of iron and had an orange tint, which we kind of termed the term Kalispell orange, which is a bright orange color. And we use it in a lot of our logos, especially for Northern Quest. And that didn't get fixed until Northern Quest came along, and that was completed in 2007. We've achieved our goal of providing a holistic approach to health and well-being when we opened the Camas Center for Community Wellness in 2008. It's a 77,000 square foot facility, which includes a medical and dental clinic, aquatic center, a gymnasium, and state-of-the-art fitness facility, a teen rec room, computer lab, and child care for age of 6 weeks to 6 years. When we opened it, we anticipated 400 members. Within the first year, we were over 2,000 memberships into the Camas Center. Next slide, please. The Camas Path is responsible for our tribe's education, healthcare, and well-being programs. It has a mental and behavioral health components of it. And then access to it is not only for tribal members, but our team members and members of the surrounding community. In addition to our healthcare facility, the tribe also we contribute to outside health and wellness organizations as YMCA and Evergreen Problem Gambling. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you very much. I don't think I've ever been in your neck of the woods. I'm going to have to get over there one of these days. It looks very pretty. I don't see any hands up, but I would like to return to the Gambling Commission. Julie or Brian Considine, if you could get back on camera. I still have my 3 questions that I posed and still don't have answers for. Maybe I can get those. To remind you, that's what is a layoff wager? What is a nonprofit kiosk exactly? And what are the ramifications of future technology? And then let me add one other thing that I'm still a little unclear that you can clarify for us later. And that is, I'm not quite clear what the differences are between the different tribal amendments. We have the Tulalip, we have the Suquamish group, the Snoqualmie, and the Kalispel. And I don't know what differentiates their different amendments. It's not clear to me. So we don't have too much time, Julie, but if you could address some of that, I'd sure appreciate it.
Certainly. So a layoff wager is a term that is used common within the industry for the gaming operation to try and minimize its liability. So for example, they may take a lot of bets on the Seahawks against the 49ers. And what might happen is that gets their wagers out of balance. And one of the options to balance that out is to place a wager with another location that maybe is heavy in the 49ers game. It's a term that's used in the industry. It's not likely going to be used in Washington specifically, but we wanted to make sure that it was addressed. The other option for dealing with that kind of inequity and liability is to adjust what they call their lines. So the odds of a wager may be higher or lower
Would that be within the state of Washington, or would that be beyond the state of Washington?
So each tribe is going to be working within their own system. And if they were going to do layoffs, it would have to be with another tribe within Washington, and they would have to actually physically make that wager. And I see Brian's on camera now too. I'm not sure if he has anything to add to that.
Thank you. I was just going to say, this usually comes up in places where you have a large fan base for one team, for like the Seahawks. Everybody's going to bet on the Seahawks. So it doesn't matter how you move the lines, everyone's going to bet on the Seahawks. Or, for example, let's say because the LEONARD casino down by Portland maybe gets a lot of action on the Oregon Ducks, because you can't bet on in-state colleges, but you could bet on the Ducks. They need an ability to offset their liability, because everyone's just going to keep betting on the Ducks. Doesn't matter what you put that line at. Doesn't matter how bad that line is for the bettor. They'll still bet on it. And so then you're going to call up another operation. So if this is different than, Brian Considine, a bettor, it's an operation wanting to place a wager with another operation to try and balance their books, because they can't move the lines to do it.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And so the future technology, one of the things that we have learned with the tribal lottery system is that technology moves forward very quickly. And what we wanted to be able to do is provide some language that would allow us to agree to changes in technology as long as the security, integrity, the regulation of the system is still intact, but allow us to be more adaptable to changes in technology. That's what that future technology piece is about. And then you said the non-profit kiosks, I'm not sure where that is from because I didn't find that terminology. Could you point to that for me?
I think it was in the, this is the Suquamish. You know, I honestly trying to find it. Going through the, you know, you sent us a lot of compacts.
I know. Well, and what I can do is I'll do some additional research. I just wasn't able to do it today, and then we can get back with you.
Okay. Senator Conway has a question as well. And then also, if there's some way we can delineate the different amendments.
I can do
Senator
that.
Conway. You're muted.
I'm getting myself unmuted here. I have a question, Julie. You know, we're signing a compact that has probably 12 tribes, but each tribe will have a different framework for mobile betting. So how once we agree to the compact, how do we implement the specific tribes framework for mobile voting?
Okay. So each tribe, you are correct, and this will answer some of Chair Kaiser's questions as well. The compacts, even though fundamentally from the 5 pillars they are the same, the language is slightly different, and it's because of each tribe's uniqueness and the way that their operation is set up. So it's the formatting of it, and the way that the language is crafted is a little bit different. On the mobile piece of it, each tribe will be able to contract with their own vendors, and there's several vendors out there that can be operating in that major category that will provide systems and equipment and all of that. So the reason that the appendix is vague and we go to GLI 33 is to make sure that those systems all operate based on some base standards. And we have a crew of technological folks, technicians, their agents, and their technicians in our gambling lab that will be learning about the systems and then going out and looking at the systems to make sure that they are implemented the way that GLI 33 requires. Does that help, Senator?
Well, the geofence is unique to each tribe.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely.
And what I'm trying to understand is how we okay a compact and a language in the compact, but how do you define the geofence for each specific tribe?
So each tribe will be able to make that determination. So what we did was narrowed the where mobile is going to happen, right? So it's not statewide, it's not on the reservation, it's narrowed to the premises of the gaming facility. The tribe can broaden it out to take wagers in the parking lot, or they may narrow it down to just their particular gaming facility or within the building. There's several different ways that you can accomplish geofencing. So there's GPS, there's connecting to a Wi-Fi, there's what they call RFID, which is proximity type of checking. So there's multiple different ways that they can do it. That's going to be up to the tribe based on their unique circumstances, but our staff will be able to work with the tribal gaming agency to make sure that that perimeter is kept intact and people cannot place wagers outside of that perimeter.
Yeah, but the definition of it, if say a tribe decides to define something that's outside what you understood, how would you in the compact process go to the tribe and say, no, that's not in, this should be out? How do you define that geofence? As what I'm trying to say, it seems like the compact defines what could be in the perimeter, but each tribe will have its own specific one. And will that be negotiated?
So what will happen is that the tribe will provide a map on where that premises is, where they've identified as the premise. Now, we've had conversations and negotiations with the 4 tribes on where that is. So they'll provide that map, and then we'll look at that map in comparison to what's in the compact, what's in the legislation, make sure that it's within those parameters. And if it's not, then we have the communication with the tribe to get that more narrow. And if we continue to dispute, there's a dispute resolution process in the compact itself.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Well, I think this has been a very informative hearing. This issue, as you know, is still something that's something of a work in progress from my perspective. So I'm glad to see progress has been made, and they've been able to get to negotiated agreements with so many tribes. Are other tribes still in negotiations with you? We have, I think, a total of 15 now, but are other tribes going to be in negotiations for sports wagering?
We've had communication with other tribes. They're looking at the options that have been that you see before you today, and they're determining whether or not they want to accept that language or talk to us separately. But we do have several ongoing conversations with tribes on the approach for sports wagering.
All right, I guess we will be probably revisiting this issue then.
Soon, I'm guessing.
All right. That's what my question was really getting at. I'll see you soon. I don't see any other hands raised. If you want to physically wave at me, that was your glasses, Rep. Wiley. You were adjusting your glasses, not waving, correct? So that completes the presentations and testimony for this public hearing on sports wagering, as well as on the Suquamish tribal gaming tribal compact. So with that, I am going to bid you adieu, and we're just about getting out on time, and I very much appreciate all your participation. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.